My perspective of social action has been influenced by James Luther Adams. James Luther Adams is considered one of the preeminent Unitarian Universalist and Christian social ethicists and theologians of the 20th century. He was a Unitarian parish minister, a labor activist, a civil rights advocate, a distinguished scholar, and divinity school professor for more than 40 years. As a young man, James Luther Adams went to Germany to study in 1927, 6 years before the Nazis came to power in Germany. In Nuremberg, he got swept along in a Nazi parade and rally. He began arguing with those watching the parade. He suddenly felt himself being pulled from behind, away from the confrontation. His rescuer turned out to be an unemployed trade union worker who was an anti-Nazi. The man brought Adams home to his family for dinner. They lived in a barren tenement apartment in the slums. They, however, willingly shared their simple meal with him. From this, Adams wrote, "Within a period of 2 hours, I learned vividly of the economic distress out of which Nazism was born. From this trade union worker, I learned also that one organization after another that refused to bow to the Nazis was being threatened with compulsion. The totalitarian process had begun. Freedom of association was being abolished. As the trade union worker explained, you keep your mouth shut and you conform or you get your head bashed in." A decade later, in Germany, Adams was to see firsthand the ineffectual, belated resistance of the churches in Germany to the Nazis' attack on freedom of speech and freedom of association. He then asked himself, what have I done that would help to prevent the rise of authoritarian government in my own country? What exercise of democracy, except for voting, have I done which could serve in any way to affect public policy? Adams came to believe that love and justice can prevail when they are supported in community by fellowship, the concern of each for all, and all for each. He believed such community created a covenant, not just among those in the community, but with the power he called God. Adams believed that this view of covenant, people are responsible for the character of society. Responsibility for promoting mercy and justice requires criticizing those who have power in society. We don't want the future to look back and note our belated resistance to the current attacks on freedom of speech and freedom of association. What can we do to prevent the rise of authoritarian government in our country? We are responsible not just for the consequences of our actions or our inactions, but ultimately for the character of our society. I am committed to championing our social action efforts under our new minister, and I look forward to our fellowship in making that happen.
A little bit if you want to. So, resistance can be a good thing, and causing good trouble, as John Lewis put it, can be a badge of honor. And as Lisa Stalteri and James Luther Adams reminds us, we are responsible, not just for the consequences of our actions or our inactions, but ultimately for the character of society. And although this is often the beginning and the end of sermons about social justice, it is not the end of this particular sermon. You're going to have to hang in with me a little while longer. I'm wondering how many of you were here when I did the musical teaching moment. I had you all choose a note of your own, and then we all offered our original note to the room and sung together. Do people remember this? There's not very many of you. Okay, we're going to have to try this again.
You gotta look behind you, the choir.
You remember. Reach deep within yourself, in your inner self, and choose a note, any note that you would like to choose. And in a moment, I will invite you to offer that note to the room. And just hold on to it for as long as you can. And let's see what happens. You understand? Okay, here we go. All right. For those of you who missed this, because I offered the first note, we ended up almost in immediate harmony, and then we came to harmony pretty quickly. Anybody notice that? But my bet is that you weren't in your minds all in harmony immediately, but groups do tend to do this. We tend to norm, human societies at least. It's interesting to watch when you put two different cultural groups together who sing differently. For example, one group starts clapping a 1 on 3, and the other starts clapping in 2 and 4, and it's uncomfortable for a few moments, and everybody looks around until we finally find some kind of a way, right? When we're in a room together, the need to make a way forward, we often figure it out. And maybe it's a survival tactic. They all end up in a similar rhythm. But when I was thinking this week about the birds and nature itself, which I shared with you a minute ago, I was thinking about birds and that each group has its own song repertoire. That's true. And individual birds can sometimes sing 2 notes at once. However, when singing in wider nature, when tuned in to all of nature, they are not tuned together. They are not in harmony. They are not in a proper rhythm. There is no need for that. But most of us still find a way to call that beautiful. And Jeremy taught me that new word, aleatoric. Aleatoric. It's a hard one. I'm going to remember it, though. I will. But even though we as humans seek harmony in a group, it doesn't magically erase your own special note or my special note inside. We are still unique, each one of us, in all the world. And we each have a true note, a truth of our being deep, deep down inside ourselves. And it may be battered or buried by society or the expectations of others, but it's still there. And that note is hard to hold in human groups, in any group, large or small. And that applies to human societies of all kinds in healthy and unhealthy ways. For example, it's healthy for a group working on an issue to find agreement on that issue, to find talking points, goals, tactics used to address it. It's important to get anything done. At UUSM, each person, every visitor has a unique note, but also they're a part of a collective song. And hopefully for many who stay, that song does evolve. That's healthy. It's healthy for a chef to coordinate ingredients that harmonize into a really great dish, but it's not a great chef who uses the same exact ingredients for every single dish on the plate. It's unhealthy for a group addressing any issue to find harmony, true cause, without paying attention to the actual voices of those affected by decisions. If we want the character of our society to be one where all voices are included, and I keep hearing you all say that, then we have to keep making room for voices around us, even those we might not understand. Not in a dismissive way, not as a chore, but as ambition. Do we hear the voices of our neighborhood when we do something or don't? that might affect them. The song we started the service with today, "In My Quiet Sorrow," is about someone who is suffering, feeling alone, yet yearning for true connection and presence. They see someone to sit beside when any kind of harmony inside themselves or outside community seems elusive. It calls out to be heard. This is not just a pastoral care assignment. There are a lot of people feeling this way right now, like they can't sing their inner song. Maybe some of you are feeling that way. Most of us can identify with this in some way or at some point in our life. And there are those with lives who are seen as less than harmonious, bravely singing notes that others find discordant. There are many examples of this. On February 28th, a lesbian was confronted by two male sheriff's deputies in a Tucson, Arizona Walmart restroom. She was sitting on the toilet and they banged on the door and insisted that she immediately leave the stall. Someone had called saying there was a man in the bathroom. On exiting the stall, she lifted her shirt immediately. I might do that too. Kind of makes me mad. But it wasn't enough. And they continued to quiz her about her masculine presentation. Eventually, she was allowed to leave, but there are other states where she might have been arrested and taken in for questioning. This is real, and it's becoming far more common. And what about my transgender siblings? Going potty is no longer safe for many. We're having a church conference, and many people are not coming to our country right now for that conference. I know firsthand about this kind of discrimination and harassment. It's easy for me to be upset about it because it ignites my own fear. Meanwhile, I hear the dismissive voices of many. If you only dress a little bit more like a girl. The plea is to silence my truth for harmony. Please norm, they say. We all have voices that are easier to hear and understand than others. I have no first-hand exposure to fear of pregnancy and the choices I might be allowed or not allowed to make. I don't have to muse childbirth, if I could conceive a child, what I would do if it had an abnormality. I haven't had to sort through my mind about pregnancy would mean to my career or anything else. Short of a miracle, it was never a fear I've had to carry. Over a year ago, some of my ministerial colleagues, women colleagues, many past childbearing age, started talking about getting prescriptions for abortion medication. It had not even occurred to me that there might be pregnant women in the United States coming to California to seek sanctuary, that someone could save another person's life by having something they would never need. I was listening to the news about Japanese Americans this week and how horrified they were immediately at the Alien Enemies Act being mentioned and then enacted. They lived it in their families. They knew what could happen. I had not fully grasped it at first. A former internment camp is less than a mile from me. So we always identify first with what we know. But there are probably other voices. I was thinking this week about all those who struggle in very politically correct environments to work enough, to learn enough, to resist the isms that live inside of us. If people don't have a safe place to share and learn, to make mistakes that are lovingly exposed, a place where awkward misunderstandings are an acknowledged part of every path of relationship, every path of learning, then some just offer nods of cooperation with things they may not truly embrace, empty of truth. Today after worship, Trans 101, if you haven't refreshed your understanding of sex and gender, it's time to do that. It has changed a lot since the 90s. Are we listening? Are we willing to hear? The first step of effective social justice is not doing what we want to do for people, which implies a separation, but seeking to hear what is needed from people in any given situation, to hear the voices, not doing for or to others, but with or beside others, hearing not only the collective notes, but individual ones, listening to those we might be tempted to call other. After we learn the voices of those crying out, there's a place from which we are indeed compelled to act, a place where true love and compassion might be ignited, but in more heartfelt, effective ways. May we find the blessings in resisting harmonies as much as we find it in engaging them. Sing with me, how could anyone ever tell you?